Hi everyone, how are you? Welcome to the Etiquette and Protocol channel. I'm Juliana Santiago, and in today's video, I'm going to talk to you a little about etiquette rules and good manners on the airplane. Well, it might seem a little strange to think that even on an airplane, you need to have etiquette and good manners. But one of my main goals with this channel is to show you that etiquette is much more than just rules for holding your fork, resting your cutlery, or how you should sit. Of course, that's also part of etiquette, and inevitably I'll end up sharing that here on the channel as well. But etiquette is a process that helps build relationships in our society, not only with people you know, but also with people you don't know. And when we talk about airplanes, you're gathered in a space with several other strangers, so working on respect and consideration for others will certainly help you practice etiquette and good manners. The practices I'll demonstrate in this video are likely familiar to you, either from the past or present. I'm curious to see who will honestly admit to having engaged in them. Or maybe you've noticed someone else doing it and realized that their behavior really wasn't cool. So go ahead and like this video because it really helps support the Etiquette and Protocol channel. If you're enjoying the videos and the content, like this video and take the opportunity to subscribe, okay? I really want to know what you think about the channel, so leave a comment here with other topics about modern etiquette or etiquette for different environments, okay? You may be interested in learning about proper etiquette for bars, restaurants, malls, or other settings that I could discuss in a future video for you. Alright, so let's get started with our first practice that should be applied when it comes to good manners on an airplane. First, right, everyone, the issue with the elbow, right? We know that on the airplane there are several seats and we have a space to put our elbows. And how many times have we sat next to someone who put both elbows on the armrests and left us with very limited space? And then the person in the middle seat ends up feeling a bit cramped, a bit uncomfortable. So every time you sit next to someone you don't know, be careful where you put your elbow. When you do this and try to get more comfortable, you're thinking mostly about yourself and not noticing how the other person is feeling. Is in that environment, just imagine sometimes you'll be sitting there for an hour with that person right next to you. Or sometimes even longer than that, sometimes 12, 15 hours next to the person. Imagine spending all that time there while they're all squeezed in. So be careful, pay attention to how you position your elbows so that not only you are comfortable, but the other person is comfortable too. Especially, it's worth noting, also pay attention to your elbows if you're sitting on the aisle side of the plane. When you're sitting on the aisle of the plane, sticking your elbow out too far can get in the way of the crew, and also the movement in the aisle, like people who need to get up for some reason, maybe to go to the bathroom or something like that. So be careful too, even when you're in the aisle seat, about sticking your elbow out and of course your feet as well. Sometimes you sit down and then you stretch your leg out into the aisle, getting in the way, and you might even fall asleep and forget that your leg is there. And then when the crew passes by, it could even cause a possible accident. So be very careful, okay? I know that a lot of people who sit in the aisle think they're going to be a little more comfortable. And that does happen, right? It's kind of inevitable, but also pay attention to how you position your elbow and your legs too, especially when you're in the aisle. The second good manners practice is one that actually happens very often. Sometimes we even do it without noticing. Or maybe you, like me, have witnessed this many times and ended up being affected by someone else's action. Which is when you have the overhead bin, that space to store your luggage, and the person fills up the entire overhead bin with their own suitcases, bags, and belongings, forgetting that space is shared with other people. When we have a flight that's less crowded, it's obviously easier for you to use that space. But when we're talking about a flight that's 100% full, imagine if everyone puts several bags and items up there. There isn't enough space for everyone, So pay attention to the space that's assigned to you. The airline has a space that's reserved for everyone, for the passengers who are on that flight. So put your luggage in the overhead compartment, and if you have, for example, a purse or a bag, keep it with you by your feet, like this on the plane. Leave that space for other people to use. Guys, this is a very common practice. How many times do we travel by plane and then we have to arrange and keep looking inside the plane for a space to put our suitcase because we ended up boarding the plane later and that space was already 100% taken. So be careful with this practice. The airlines even try to organize it, but sometimes it's hard even for the crew, for the people who work inside the plane to organize such a large number of people. So sometimes it may happen that one person or another ends up going unnoticed and taking up too much space. So make a difference yourself, right? Leave space for other people too. Imagine this situation happening to you. You get there, put your suitcase down, and all the space is taken, okay? So it's really something we should pay attention to. The third practice is children on flights. I can speak about this practice with authority and experience as I've been on both sides in a way. The person who didn't have a child and traveled and ended up having kids on the flight, but I've also been the mother of a child who cried practically the entire flight. So I've been on both sides, and honestly, this is a situation that's really out of the parents' control. Many times, children are crying because the flight is very traumatizing for them. They have to stay still for a long time in a single space. Children have a hard time staying still unless they're babies, but there are also all the things that happen to babies when they're at a high altitude. So this is a bit traumatic for babies, for children in general. So if you notice that this is becoming a problem for those parents, be respectful, have a little patience, because honestly, parents really don't like going through this situation, right? If it were me, I would want my daughter to be calm every time she traveled, sitting quietly on the flight, being good and peaceful. But of course, parents also need to keep their children under control, right? We know there are kids who scream, who keep kicking the seat of the person behind them, right? You're sitting there while a child keeps hitting the back of your seat and their parents don't intervene. So yes, parents do need to control their children. Like I said, there are situations that get a little out of the parents' control. So if you're a passenger and you notice this kind of situation, pay attention to how the parents are handling it too. Notice if the parents are trying to solve it and everything, and realize that you need to be a little patient. You need to stay calm too, because that mom and dad are going through a tough moment. But also, moms and dads, please take care of your children on the flight, right? Sometimes bring a toy, bring something for them to keep themselves entertained. If possible, sometimes bring a little movie that the child likes so they can watch it during that time to keep them distracted and make the time go by faster. Make it enjoyable for all. So yes, there are both sides, and both sides need to be prepared for when more complicated situations arise. Happen during the flight. And if you're enjoying this video about etiquette and good manners on the plane, go ahead and like it and subscribe to the channel. Etiquette e protocolo. Let me know if you would like to see more videos like this, because I really want to bring content from our daily lives and show how we can apply good manners in any aspect of our lives. So leave a comment and share this video with other people who travel a lot. Do you have a friend who's always traveling? Go ahead and share this video, because I'm sure that person will really like this information. Continuing then, let's move on to our fourth practice, which is what, guys? Starting conversations with other people on the flight. Talking to other people can be very pleasant for some, but it might not be very interesting for others. So if you like to start conversations, especially with strangers, obviously pay attention to how the person behaves. For example, if the person is reading, if they're working, or if they're wearing headphones listening to music, that person is clearly trying to avoid a possible conversation or introduction of a topic. So be careful not to, in a way, invade the other person's space. because sometimes they want a moment of privacy. Sometimes they have, let's
suppose, to travel.
Traveling by plane is a problem for her. As we know, there are some people who are afraid, even a little scared of flying, and they look for something to distract themselves, to make the time go by faster. So respect these people. But if you notice that the person next to you is able and willing to have a conversation, to chat, then talk to the person, always remembering to keep an appropriate tone of voice, right? So you don't really raise your voice too much during the conversation, because that can disturb other people who are close to you. It can be complicated for other people there. It can definitely disturb them. So watch your tone of voice, and especially when you start a conversation with a stranger, be careful about the topic you choose to discuss with that person. Specifically regarding the airplane, avoid sharing your own experiences with the person that you had on flights, those bad experiences, you know. Sometimes you were traveling and there was really strong turbulence. Sometimes you were traveling and the plane had to make an emergency landing. Be careful, because you don't know the other person sitting next to you. And sometimes they might have some panic or fear inside them about flying. Sometimes just going through the process of taking that flight is already something very difficult for them. So pay attention to the topics you bring up and avoid talking about previous flight experiences, especially unpleasant ones. And now our fifth tip is about disembarking, right? Disembarking is kind of a crazy thing, isn't it? Everyone starts getting up, right? The plane hasn't even opened the door for people to get off, and everyone already wants to stand up. They're desperate to get out. There's this kind of panic, like, I need to get out, I need to get out. Be careful with that, you know? Wait for your turn. If you're in the last seat on the plane, you're going to have to wait a while for everyone to get out. That's inevitable. It's no wonder that nowadays the first seats on the plane even cost a bit more with some airlines, exactly so people can get out faster. It's a kind of priority for the person to get out faster. So be a little patient. Sometimes when you start taking your bags down, they start falling on people's heads. Be careful when taking your bags down, when making this kind of movement. If it's not your turn to leave, wait, be a little patient. If you, for example, have a connecting flight or are sometimes late for a meeting, sometimes the flight was already delayed and you have an appointment right after, and leaving a little faster will make a difference. I even suggest you talk to the crew. Sometimes if there are seats available up front, the crew might even accommodate you in the first rows. Try to help you in some way. Talk, right? Everything can be solved with a good conversation. If you can't talk to the crew or all the seats in the front of the plane are taken, you can talk to the people near you. Let them know, guys, I have a connecting flight. We're already late. Would it be okay if I left first? Do you mind? I've actually done this myself once because I had to catch a connecting flight. The flight was already late and it was pretty complicated. I was with my husband and we had to run. It was a really tough situation. So putting yourself in someone else's shoes makes all the difference, right? You need to have a little patience when someone asks to go ahead of you, because one day you might be in that situation yourself. You might go through this kind of situation, this kind of difficulty, and it's really quite delicate. So if you have time, if you've landed and that's your final destination, if you're calm and don't have any other commitments or connecting flights to catch, have a little patience when getting your luggage from the baggage area. And also go through the process there
of disembarkation,
because otherwise it becomes very chaotic and it's stressful for everyone, right? It's quite complicated. And if you liked this video, you probably want to understand a little more about modern etiquette practices. Right here on the side, there's a video talking about modern etiquette rules that everyone should know, several practices from our daily lives that you will certainly enjoy learning about too, especially if you've watched this video up to this point. I'll be waiting for you there. Just click to watch. That's it for now. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you in the next video.